Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a bright and early redistricting meeting. I want to welcome the public here to our first public hearing of the Joint Redistricting Committee for 2021. And thank you, members, for being here this morning. And doubly thank you to the members of the public that signed up to speak. I'd like to first acknowledge our Sergeant-at-Arms, the House Sergeant-at-Arms, Nina Laget. Do I have that pronounced correctly? Sorry. All right. I apologize in advance also to our public speakers if I destroy your name. Terry McGraw is here from the House as well. Hi, Terry. From the Senate side, we got Rod Fuller. Rod. Dwight Green. Dwight. Cherie Hedrick. Cherie, Chris Moore, and Hal Roach. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it in advance. Your help this morning. Today is going to be limited to an opportunity for the public to comment on the criteria that we provided publicly yesterday. In 2019, we were able to engage in an overall process that was largely supported by both parties and transparent to the public. And I think the expectation is that we are going to largely stick to or improve upon that process as we head into 2021 redistricting here today. And part of that improvement process is listening to suggestions from the public. And again, that's why we're here today. The purpose, focusing on criteria, let me just check my notes here. There will be later opportunities for the public to have input on the map drawing. That's really not the subject for today. I'm not going to cut anybody off if they want to go beyond the criteria, but we do prefer, we think it'll be more productive if you stick to the scope of the intended public comments today, which are the criteria that we talked about already. So I also want to mention that the House in particular is tied up with budget work. So you may see some folks coming and going today, both on the House and the Senate side for different reasons. There is no disrespect intended to our members of the public. We have lots of eyes and ears here. We are going to capture your good comments, even if one or another of us is not in the room at the time you speak. What you're saying to us is important, and we will capture the substance of that. No doubt. So I just want to tell you in advance, some will have to come and go, and no disrespect is intended at all. All right. Anything else? Let me turn to my to Chairman Hall. He's good. Chairman Daniel. We're good. All right, with that, let's get going. I've got the pre-sign-up sheet. It was done electronically that we now have in our hands. Our belief is that everyone who is physically here is reflected on this sheet. So I'm just going to go down this sheet. Now, if you got here later and you signed up, that's okay. It looks like we're going to have plenty of time to hear your comments. You will be given two minutes to make your comments. I'm going to go down this sheet. If we miss you, please talk to the Sergeant-at-Arms, and we'll make sure you're taken care of. So we're going to start this morning with Guy Smith. Is Guy Smith here this morning? Mr. Smith. And when you come to the microphone, and this is true for everyone, please state your name and the organization you represent for the record. Thank you.
My name is Guy Smith. I run an operation called the Patriots Business Alliance. Not really the main reason I'm here this morning. I'd just like the opportunity, thank you for the opportunity to address you. I guess I'm just crazy to think that we might use the same criteria for redistricting that was used the first time maps were drawn and receive pre-clearance from the U.S. Department of Justice without protest since the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed. And understand that was the Attorney General Eric Holder Justice Department. Yes, that's right. Back in the ancient year of 2011, the first maps drawn by a Republican majority since the VRA of 1965 was implemented. Sadly, because of Democrats' sue until blue tactics, and the illegal actions of multiple judges and courts owned by Democrats, this General Assembly was forced to act in direct violation of the North Carolina State Constitution, as specified in Article 2, Section 3, Sentence 4, which reads, when established, the Senate districts the Senate districts and the apportionment of senators shall remain unaltered until the return of another decennial census of population taken by order of Congress. Article 2, Section 5, Sentence 4 reads, when established, the representative districts and the apportionment of representatives shall remain unaltered until the return of another decennial census. I guess I'm just a little baffled that this body and our state government in general doesn't understand if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Am I wrong? Thank you for your attention, and God bless the United States, and God bless the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Smith. Bob Phillips.
Good morning. My name is Bob Phillips, and I work for Common Cause North Carolina. And I wish I were here today to addressing an independent commission, as I believe that's really the best way to do redistricting. But since that's not up for consideration, we have this simple plea. Make this redistricting process fair, transparent, and inclusive. A great place to start is abiding by the Common Cause v. Lewis ruling from 2019 that prohibits the use of election and partisan data drawing the maps. Another criteria important to us is to respect communities of interest. We know that this is where in past General Assemblies have gotten into trouble, packing, cracking, slicing, dicing communities of interest for partisan gains. Don't do it. That's what we're all going to be watching for. And here's a chance to surprise us and do the right thing by respecting communities of interest. From a process standpoint, we hope you put a premium on public input, and today's a good example of that. Have a series, however, of public hearings across the state on the front end before the maps are drawn and on the back end after the maps are created. No one knows their own communities better than your constituents, so help them guide you on where the lines should be drawn. It's incumbent on this committee to ensure that all North Carolinians can have a say in what the next decade's voting maps look like. And I'll use the L word here. Litigation. The way to avoid it is not to engage in partisan and racial gerrymandering. Our job is to hold you accountable to the important task of drawing the lines in a fair and transparent manner. It's important for the public to have a better understanding of what you are doing when you are drawing the maps. And Mr. Chairman, I have submitted some specific recommendations to that end. Common Cause is not interested in outcomes in elections, but the process of how things are done. We want redistricting, as I've mentioned, to be fair, inclusive, and transparent, a process that instills confidence from the people that indeed their voice is being heard. And I believe those goals are in everyone's.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Andy Jackson.
Andy Jackson, John Locke Foundation. I'm going to start off by saying I'm grateful that the Joint Redistricting Committee's proposed criteria includes a ban on political and racial data for redistricting. The proposed criteria also includes incumbents' addresses. If incumbents' addresses are included in the final criteria list, that consideration should be secondary to other considerations, especially compactness. And this leaves us with two major criteria, making districts reasonably compact along with other standards and considering North Carolina's geography, and preserving communities of interest. On that second point, preserving communities of interest, that's generally accomplished by not splitting political units, particularly counties and voting districts, and where practical, municipalities. Beyond that, claims of communities of interest, of which you're going to hear a lot over the next several months, are often in the eye of the beholder and should be considered within the context of keeping districts compact and preserving political boundaries. Beyond that, I appreciate that we are going to anticipate an open process in the actual drawing of maps. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Jenny Couture Lynch.
Hi, my name is Jenny Couture Lynch. I'm speaking for myself. I'm an Apex resident for the last 35 years. I had an opening to talk about redistricting in general, but we all know that doing it fairly is the right thing for everybody. So here are my thoughts. Please don't skimp on gathering public comment across the state. I know time constraints are tight, but you don't have to plan a traveling road show to go to every public meeting in each place. Instead, you can let members hold individual meetings in their own districts, live stream them, and record them. Schedule those meetings by next week and publicize them on all your platforms so people can make plans to go. Make it easy for people to get their comments to you. You can't wait till the last minute to notify people of a meeting and then expect a broad cross-section of views. Today's a good example. We heard about the meeting last Friday afternoon with the promise that the meeting would run until all attendees had a chance to speak. On Monday, yesterday, at 4, we were told a maximum of 60 speakers are allowed. Online sign-up wasn't possible till almost 5 o'clock. Not much lead time there and no time to get the word out. This committee can and should do better. The comments we make here today and elsewhere are part of the public record, so give us the chance to see each other's comments as your mapping goes on. We're the voters. We need to know how you grind the sausage and make the laws, and what's the input that drives the decisions you're going to make. Also, I ask, with live streamed meetings, keep count of who is listening on the telephone and who is streaming, and then let us know so we know how much interest there is in the community. It helps us to trust, and you want us to trust you. Thank you.
Thank you. Lika Shupek.
Hi, my name is Lika Shupek, and I'm coming here today to comment on the redistricting criteria that were proposed yesterday. These redistricting criteria are unfortunately so vague that I worry that they do not actually constrain the map drawing in any meaningful way. There are many, many criteria that say things like, for example, municipal boundaries may be considered, VTDs may be split when necessary, but they don't actually specify when that necessary is or what the terms of may be considering municipal boundaries are. Similarly, when we look at compactness, there is an academic paper cited that supposedly contains minimum scores. Those minimum scores are not explicitly given, and they're only said that they may be considered as a guide. That does not, in my opinion, constrain map drawing in any meaningful way. Also, the provisions like no racial data and no election data, I assume in practice mean that that data is not going to be uploaded to the software used by legislators to draw maps. However, that does not say anything about the outcome of the maps. We know you are legislators, you know your precincts in your areas, in your districts well. You have a lot of that information in your head. So we also know that maps are going to be allowed to be uploaded to that software from outside of the software, not natively drawn there. We do not know how those maps will be evaluated for the use of election or racial data. So in essence, the criteria that we are seeing are not criteria that seem to meaningfully constrain the map drawing in a way that will result in maps that have fair representation for the people of this state.
Thank you for those comments. Jennifer Rubin.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Rubin. I'm Vice President of the League of Women Voters of North Carolina. Redistricting is very important for the 18 leagues across the state. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, we would like to encourage you to take the following steps into consideration. A redistricting timeline should ensure the opportunity for informed public comment at every step of the process, before and after draft maps are drafted. We recommend meaningful public comment opportunities throughout the state with options for written public comment. And increased transparency throughout the redistricting process should be ensured through broadcasting and recording of public hearings and making proposed maps fully accessible to the public. In addition to these steps, we ask that in the drawing of districts, there is respect for communities of interest and that redrawing districts avoids division of counties, municipalities, and precincts. These recommendations provide a blueprint for meaningful public input, which will make our 2021 redistricting process more fair, inclusive, transparent, and timely. Thank you for the work you do on behalf of the people of North Carolina.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. Marilyn Hartman.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Marilyn Hartman. I live in Durham, and I think the most important criterion to me, the one that I'd like to see prioritized by the General Assembly, is one that would end partisan gerrymandering. In other words, I'm calling on you to create a prohibition on favoring or disfavoring a political party. This means that political affiliation data should be used, but only to make redistricting fair. Every member of the legislature knows the election data in their heads, even when the data are not explicitly considered. So let's use this information fairly. Right now, I believe there are slightly more registered Democrats than Republicans in North Carolina. 2020 was 36% versus 30%. This means that our elected officials should be more equally divided between Republicans and Democrats. This is important to me because I believe in fairness. With current partisan gerrymandering, we have a disproportionate advantage for Republicans, and that's not what democracy looks like. We have had gerrymandering by Democrats in the past, and that's not fair either. Partisan gerrymandering matters. In recent years, it has resulted in many of us not having our voices adequately represented by our elected officials. It has meant that despite the fact that a majority of North Carolinians favor access to health insurance for everyone, too many people in our state live without it. It has meant that although most people in North Carolina send their children to public schools, these schools are inadequately funded by our General Assembly. In Congress, we have few gun control laws, although most North Carolinians are in favor of such laws. I could go on, but the bottom line is if we didn't have partisan gerrymandering, we would more likely have laws and policies that reflect the values of the majority of voters in the state. I'd like to see the General Assembly adopt the proportionality criterion that is being used by Ohio as one of our state's high priority criteria. With this criteria, the proportion of districts for each political party would closely mirror the portion of voters from each party based on data from the last 10 years. I'd be open to other ways of reducing partisan gerrymandering, but at the end of the day, I hope you will establish a set of criteria that are fair to people regardless of their political persuasion. This is what the...
Thank you, Ms. Hartman. Jennifer Bremer.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Bremer, and I'm a redistricting nerd from Orange County. I'd like to comment on something that I'm pretty sure no one else will, the choice of the Pildes and Niemi article to set a standard for how compact the districts must be. This is a bizarre choice, frankly, because Pildes and Niemi set no such standard. Their article was published back in '93, shortly after the explosion in racial gerrymandering in the 1990 redistricting round. That's the round that gave us the infamous snake, otherwise known as CD12, one of the most contested racial gerrymanders in the country. Pildes and Niemi rated it the single worst district in the country. In the last round, the legislature wisely decided to end the controversy by coiling it up neatly and stuffing it into a basket called Mecklenburg County. Back in the 90s, Pildes and Niemi wanted to find the very worst gerrymanders that had just been drawn, and lacking the tools that we have now, they decided to look only at compactness. They picked two measures, Polsby-Popper and Rioch, that each defined scores from 0, least compact, to 100, the most compact. They arbitrarily picked a score of 10 out of 100 as their cutoff for really, really bad compactness. Obviously, a score of 10% out of 100 is not a measure of good or even good enough. It's a score signaling truly awful. Some time ago, just to be sure, I contacted Professor Pildes, now at the NYU Law School, to confirm that this cutoff was not meant to be a standard of any kind, and confirm it he did. So when former Representative Lewis set 10 out of 100 as the minimum compactness score and cited their article, this was basically a little David Lewis joke. Perhaps he was disappointed that no one got it. Maybe he was amused to see the judges pick it up in their decision. I was not. Someone's clerk needs to be talked to. Well, David Lewis left the building a year ago, and his little joke needs to go away too. Please talk to the experts and set a real standard for acceptable compactness.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bremer. Elise Colston.
Hi, I'm Elise Colston. I live here in Raleigh. When it comes to drawing fair voting maps, I'd really like to see an open process with citizen participation and access at all levels and steps in the process. And we're here today to talk about criteria. And we would like to see impartial criteria that does not include considering the address or location of incumbents. So your districts will have to be apportioned substantially on population, obviously, one person, one vote. They also should not intentionally or unduly favor or disfavor any political party. Communities of interest should be considered in drawing electoral districts, provided that such districts do not dilute the effective representation of minority citizens. No use or consideration should be made of the address of incumbents. Now, in the past, both Democrats and Republicans have prioritized protecting incumbents. And I know we often talk about bipartisanship, so one bipartisan way to deal with this is do something no one's completely happy with, and that is completely disallowing use of the address of incumbents and candidates when it comes to drawing voting districts. So that's my bipartisan suggestion for you. Additionally, we need to talk about the priority of criteria, and compactness should not be prioritized over other community considerations. Compactness, multiple mathematicians have done studies, and we see that compactness does not prohibit parties from stacking the decks in their favor. Also, to jump on what Jennifer said, if you insist on using compactness as a primary criteria, I would suggest you look at a method like the population polygon or something other than Pulse-B-Popper, which has been shown not to be as effective as we would like. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Colston. Robertcushman? Is there a Robertcushman? Seeing none. Harry Taylor.
I'm Harry Taylor from Charlotte. I'm with the League of Women Voters. Democracy refers to a government in which supreme power is vested in the people, and that power is to elect their representatives in free elections from time to time as prescribed. Rigging election district lines via gerrymandering for political power has nothing to do with democracy. The practice, now 233 years old, is dishonest, it's anti-democratic, it's unethical, but it's entirely legal because this body continues to choose to do nothing about it. I'm here today to ask you to do something about that. We can have democracy or we can have gerrymandering, but we can't have both. So we're on the brink of a new decade. 35 of you are empaneled to create maps to take back to your various chambers for approval to decide who's going to vote for who for the next 10 years. From the time you're sworn in to office, you were bestowed an honorific. You're called for the rest of your life honorable people. There's nothing honorable about election rigging. I'm here today to ask you on behalf of 10.5 million North Carolinians to create fair, balanced districts for the next 10 years for the U.S. House, North Carolina Senate, so that on election day, general election day, from here on in for the next 10 years, every single person on that ballot has an equal chance to win that race. Thank you for listening to me today, your honorables.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. William Doom.
Thank you. My name is William Doom, and I am a long-term resident of Davidson County. I'm representing myself. There are several nations all around the world that have an official political party. If you're a member of that political party, you can be selected as a candidate. The government selects the candidates. And if you're not a member of that party, your vote has no voice. That's the way it feels to many of us in Davidson County. A gerrymandered district is a sign that the legislature does not respect the idea of self-government. It has no intention of representing the interests of the constituents. Being in a safe district means you do not have to carefully listen to your constituents to get reelected. The result is that the government is less and less responsive to the citizens. The government is less and less trusted by the citizens. Cynicism and the disrespect of the government rise. It's a destructive force. Excuse me. The only way to rebuild trustworthy, honest, responsive government is to get rid of gerrymandering. To do that, election maps must be drawn with fairness as a central criteria. If we could have compact districts with constituents sharing many common interests, we could confer with our fellow constituents and then inform our representatives of our preferences, and our representatives could hear our voices and actually represent us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Doom. Cathy Wheeler.
Good morning. My name is Cathy Wheeler. I live in Summerfield in Guilford County. I'm here because I know how fragile our elections and all things related, including redistricting, really are. So I'm here to try to strengthen them by offering comment on these criteria. My major concern relates to the low priorities given to two of the criteria, and this will mirror some comments you've already heard. I believe they should be of higher priority. Municipal boundaries at number 7 and community consideration at number 10. In most cases, the common interest in a municipality and in a community are the best reason for keeping them together. That's how to best meet the legislative needs of the voters in these entities. If split apart, those needs are diluted and are not met. In addition to the low priority of these criteria, I'm concerned, as others are, that the criteria are written to say they may be considered. I believe that should be changed to they will be considered. I believe it should be mandatory to study the common needs. I also believe these priorities, as I said before, should be higher than number 7 and number 10. My other concern is on the criteria on use of racial data and election data. The criteria say that these data shall not be used. However, what is in place to prevent knowledge versus actual data about racial makeup and election results from being used to influence the drawing of maps? There should be some safeguard written into the criteria to check for maps along the process based on knowing racial and electoral information. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Ms. Wheeler. Allison Riggs.
Good morning. My name is Allison Riggs. I'm the Co-Executive Director for Programs and Chief Counsel for Voting Rights at the Southern Coalition for Social Justice. There are two problematic elements of the proposed criteria made public yesterday that I'm going to address. First, it is neither appropriate nor required to draw districts race blind. As long as redistricting has occurred, it has been a tool used to harm voters of color. Beyond compliance with the Voting Rights Act, it is entirely appropriate to advance race equity, to consider race in the drawing of districts, to ensure that voters of color are not being cracked or packed. Additionally, in Covington versus North Carolina, this legislative body tried the same thing with respect to race-blind redistricting. A 3-judge panel, including Republican and Democratic appointees, and a unanimous Supreme Court rejected your race-blind remedial drawing of 2 Senate districts and 2 House districts. In fact, there is apparently not a federal court judge out there who agrees with this approach, and we urge you to abandon that criteria. Second, the criteria of no election data and considering incumbent addresses is in inherent conflict and represents a farcical commitment to nonpartisan line drawing. We know that when you protect incumbents, you protect your ill-gotten gains from a decade of partisan and racial gerrymandering. You are fooling no one. That criteria means nothing, and we urge you to address and amend these criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riggs. Cheryl Ting.
Good morning, and thank you, chairs and committee members. My name is Cheryl Ting, and I am president of the League of Women Voters of Wake County. The League has spent decades advocating for fair maps and for a transparent process that encourages public participation. The redistricting process is your duty and one that directly impacts the lives of North Carolinians. What you do over the next 3 months will impact voters for the next 10 years. While the delay of census data has made the redistricting process challenging, there are many aspects of redistricting that should have been initiated months ago. This committee should have met, voted on, and put in place the processes and rules for the upcoming round of redistricting. The criteria that were discussed within days of this week's census data release should have already been decided. While we commend you for opening a public comment portal, we are disappointed that we have not yet seen public hearings scheduled across the state. These hearings should provide opportunities for those, especially in rural areas and in communities of color, to have their voices heard on what constitutes their community of interest. The fact that these have not been scheduled or are being rushed with the excuse of census delays leads to the conclusion that it is your intention to yet again deny the public opportunities to participate for the state and provide while you draw maps that serve your own interest. We ask this committee to hold several hearings across the state and provide adequate advance notice for these hearings and gain a better understanding of communities of interest as a redistricting criteria component. In addition, we ask that you do not use member residency as a criteria component. We know the state legislatures like playbooks and have been using them around the country. I would invite you to take a look at this playbook that was mailed to all of you in January of this year. It is a playbook on how to have transparency in redistricting, a playbook about providing the public with sufficient time to evaluate maps and providing the rationale for these maps. In effect, a playbook on how to gain the trust of the citizens of North Carolina.
Thank you, Ms. Ting. Gary Foreman.
My name is Gary Foreman. I'm from Durham. I represent All on the Line and myself. I just wanted to draw the attention of why you're making these criteria, that we have two major issues already, that we have a majority of Democratic voters in the state, but we have a congressional ratio of in the House of Representatives 8-5. The other criteria and the thing that we have to be aware of is that whatever you guys say goes. There's only one other state in the entire union that is not subject to veto, and that's Connecticut. So you can be bullies through all this, so let's please don't do that. And the other criteria I want to address myself to, which is you hear a lot through here, is the criteria you adopted for preservation of communities of interest, and that is in the sense that they're not diluted by cracking or packing, and that the outcomes of these criteria be tested using the technology that's available to all of us now. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Cathy Greggs.
Thank you for allowing us to come and speak. My name is Cathy Greggs. I'm the co-founder and president of Fayetteville Police Accountability Community Task Force, but today I come here with All in One from Cumberland County. First, I want to make sure that we understand what the word democracy means. And I say this coming from an Army combat veteran of the United States Army, along with Senator Kurt Deviere. First, I want to make sure that we understand Senator Kurt Deviere has been assisting our community with understanding the redistricting of maps, because some people don't understand what exactly this means. This is very important for the people, and democracy for the people should be heard. And I ask that we allow the people that live in these communities to come and speak, as well as everyone else that's sitting here. The people that are disenfranchised and demarginalized and has not been able to vote. should be able to say how they want their community to look and who they want to vote for. Then we also have issues where we have Army bases here where Army people don't even understand the voting process. We need to make sure that we educate the people and give them awareness on what is really going on for the next 10 years so we can live here in the actual way of life, livable conditions, instead of us asking you how we want to live. We should be able to tell you what we want. We should be able to ask you to actually listen to us. Democracy is always with the people and will always be for the people. We speak for the people, by the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greggs. Carla Acaza d'Austin. Is Ms. d'Austin here?
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to speak. I'm also from Fayetteville, North Carolina, Cumberland County, and I'm an Army veteran. Today I'm here to represent myself as an Army veteran. And as an Army veteran, we took an oath to defend our country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'm sure everyone here has taken that oath to serve the people here. And I'm just asking you today to look at that. You know, active duty and veterans have been to and continue to go to other countries to fix their government. Yet we come back home and this is what we have. We have a government that doesn't seem to be for us because why? Redlining, gerrymandering, racial disparities, You know, it's a shame to me. It's kind of disgusting that I've been to other places to help their government. I have to come back home, and it's 2021, and we're still fighting this. It's kind of sad. So I'm asking you to put your hand in your heart. There's active duty members. There's, contrary to popular belief, these active duty members and veterans, they don't make that much money. So they're living in these districts, in these poor areas that are getting gerrymandered. And these are people that our government sends out for all of our liberties, for all of our freedom. Yet they're not being given an equal opportunity to vote. They're not being given an equal opportunity to live in the American dream. So I ask you to please do the right thing. Do the right thing. That's all we're asking you to do, and represent the people that you took an oath to represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. d'Austin. Caitlin Metzger.
Good morning. My name is Caitlin Metzger. I'm a Durham County voter. I want to comment on two main things today. First, the process that got us to this public hearing, I believe, was not given sufficient notice. In my day-to-day job, I talk to voters all across the state, and many people, especially working people, especially student voters and young voters, could not be here on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. We live in a vast state, and in order to get to Raleigh, it really wasn't accessible. And I just want to encourage you to hold more public hearings and also give us more notice to get people here. The second thing, in terms of the criteria, I just want to urge you to move, as others have said, municipal boundaries as well as communities of interest higher on the list. It is not okay with me that incumbency is protected higher than communities of interest. The voters of North Carolina should be protected and be listened to and be respected, and they need to be higher on the list of criteria that you're considering. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And did you mention, do you represent an organization?
I do work in an organization called You Can Vote, but today I'm here as a Durham County voter.
Thank you. Andrew Silver.
I'm from Durham. I'm a member of Carolina Jews for Justice, Common Cause, ACLU, NAACP, League of Women Voters, among others. The most important safeguard for ensuring that districts are fairly drawn is that no data on political affiliation or voting records be allowed. The only purpose for using such data is to gerrymander the districts so that many districts are either safely Republican or safely Democrat. This makes the general election pointless. and makes the primary elections decisive. Having representatives elected essentially by a single party promotes extremism, so that politics have become more partisan, with the two parties unable to work together. Representatives in seats safe from challenge by the other party are able to ignore their constituents, and the legislatures are, because of gerrymandering, unresponsive to the public interest. Thank you for calling my name, even though I didn't see the sign up online.
Certainly, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Silver. Robertcushman, I believe, is here. Yes.
Morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Robertcushman. I'm from Durham, North Carolina. I'm a 15th generation American, a Mayflower descendant, and have been working as a spatial analyst and a mapper for the past 25 years. I, like most Americans these days, agree with Mr. Silver that discourse has become more polarized, more divisive than ever before, and I do think that the electoral mapping is the root cause of much of this. Indifference, I don't have the same thought as he does. I do think you have to look closely at the electoral party affiliation of the voters to ensure that you have proportional representation in each of the districts you create. We're a 50-50 state, a purple state. It should be easier to build consensus here than anywhere else. And yet we have, much as he said, people from the right leaning further to the right, people from the left leaning further to the left so that they can win their primaries. I think the electoral districts have to look more like North Carolina. You can ensure that within some limited bounds that you have equal representation from the different parties in the districts. Everybody should be able to woo my vote. I'm a moderate, but I'm not represented. There's either an extreme left or an extreme right, and many independents, moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats such as myself, don't feel like we have any representation when November comes around. Let's make the primaries a choice that anybody could win the vote. And only you can do that. I know how important mapping is to the outcomes of this. I am a professional mapper, and you can do this for the good of us all. Our representational democracy really depends on your choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cushman. We have exhausted the list of sign-ups. If you are in the room and did not sign up but would like to speak, we have time to do that if you would like. Yes, ma'am, and if you will state your name and your affiliation, who you're representing, before you get started. Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Flora Jean Busby. I'm representing Action NC. I understand that the drawing of the lines, the redistricting, is to ensure a particular party to be reelected again. Therefore, you don't have to do nothing but just sit and get reelected. We live in a democracy, and we should have people power. You should be concerned about the people and not about your seat. I want to share a story with you about Emmett Till. A young man wrote a book about Emmett Till, and I saw this on TV, and he did talk about years ago when we had Moral Mondays. We had people coming up here every Monday to get laws for the people. A lot of people said that Moral Mondays did nothing because we still have the same thing. Yet, he did point out that Pat McCrory is no longer governor. So therefore, people power. We don't change the laws. We change the people sitting in the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Busby. Anybody else? If not, we have concluded our business unless the chairs prompt me otherwise. Thank you again for being here. Have a great day. We're adjourned.